Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. Now, as you can see from this table, I rather like the Jaguar XJR range of slot cars. And as you can see, I've got a range here from different manufacturers. Now, you may remember about a year ago, I totally transformed this Scalextric XJR9 into a little bit of a track monster. The final stage of tune ended up with a full suspension pod, and we managed to hustle her around Crow Valley in 47.5 seconds to do 7 laps. And that is, to be fair, a really good time for any car. Now, obviously, this is a very big, relatively big Le Mans style car, and Crow Valley is actually a rally track masquerading as a road circuit. So it's always going to be difficult to get the XJR9 of any type around Crow Valley because of all the really tight bends. But we did manage it, and it went quite well. I've also tuned one of these, is it SRS or RSR? I always forget. But one of these ones with the steering, we tuned up one of those for a subscriber a few videos before I did this one. And that was all great. Absolutely fantastic. I love these cars. However, about 6 months ago, I said to the world that I was going to do a BMW Scalextric Mini. And then when I put that out, I had a subscriber contact me, Francis, and he said, would you do a Mini for me when you do yours? So I said I absolutely would. So a couple of weeks back, as you may have seen, I did the BMW Scalextric Mini. I tuned up my cream car, and I also did a red one, and that was actually Francis's car. Now, in between Francis sending me his car and me actually doing the video, probably about 6 months, because I was just busy with other commitments and so on. But in that time period, Francis said, I'd like to send you a car as a gift because you're doing up my car on the channel and I really appreciate it. And I said, well, as long as you're happy to give it to me, I don't mind. As long as you don't want it and it's not really standing you in for any money, whatever, I'm happy to take it. And he said, no, owes me nothing. I don't want it. It's in bits. So maybe you're going to have to put it all back together again. And he said, I'm pretty sure all the bits are there, but maybe not. But you can have it because I'm not going to do anything with it. So that'll be really cool. What is it? And he said, it's a Slot-it XJR9. I'm like, ooh, excellent. Because as you can see, I really like those cars. So he sent me the box and here we are. So now the BMW is completely finished and Francis has got his car. It's been returned. He's very happy with it. It runs extremely well and I was very pleased with it as well. If you recall, I painted the roof in checkers, black and white checkers, and I thought that it really smart. Anyway, so Francis has got his car. He's very happy. He sent me this car that he doesn't want. It's in pieces and that gives me the ideal opportunity to make a video on it and build myself yet another XJR9 for my collection. But this time it's going to be a Slot-it. Now, when I did this video with the Scalextrics, if you saw in the video, I did say there was an elephant in the room. That was obviously the Slot-it version of the Scalextric car. So if you're going to take an XJR9 and make a fast one, you're really not going to start with the old vintage Scalextric car. But I like to take these cars and turn them into something that they're not and try and eke some more performance out of them. So that's why I did it, just a bit of fun. But if you wanted a really good one, then you'd obviously get the Slot-it one. Now, I understand that the Slot-it car is not the best for Group C. I believe the Porsche is better than the XJR9, probably because of the physics of the body and so on and so forth. So I understand this isn't the fastest Group C car that Slot-it do. But, you know, if you want an XJR9, that's what it is. So I thought, with Francis's donated car, I could make a video of putting it all back together again, making a few tweaks along the way, and then we could send this car around Crow Valley and see how it compares to the vintage Scalextric one that I also made, because that was something that somebody commented in the comments below in the XJR9 video that I should do. How does the standard Slot-it one go around the track? Of course, we didn't know. These two cars here are brand new. I did eventually take them out for a 15 minutes of fame video. Didn't run them hard. They only ran around Ricard Valley because I really don't want to race these hard. They're not going to go particularly well around Crow Valley because they're so big. I don't want to scuff them and bang them off the fences and break them or whatever. So I just ran them gently around Ricard Valley just so that we could see what they look like, and I was very happy with that. However, this one's different. This one has already been run. It already needs to be put back together again. It's definitely been used. So this will be a great car to thrash around Crow Valley and see what it does compared to my tuned one. Now, warning, I am expecting it to be quicker. How much quicker, I don't know. So this is going to be a really interesting video to see just how quick we can get a Slot-it XJR9 around Crow Valley compared to the one that I customized. So let's get on the table, I'll show you the contents of this box, we'll build it, and then we'll hit the track and see what this ends up to be. Okay, so let's start this very fun project. And as you can see, I've already put it in the box for safekeeping. And here is the beast. Here is our Slot-it XJR9, number 66 in the Castrol livery. And this is my most favourite car in my most favourite livery. So you can imagine how excited I was when Francis said he was going to donate this car to me. So thank you very much, Francis. I've already said thank you to Francis privately, but here we are again. I'm saying thank you to you again. So there is the body. And inside our box, we have a Slot-it guide. Now this hasn't even been on a car. It's brand spanking new, so that is really cool. And then in here, now this, actually I'm going to leave that one for a second because that one is a bit interesting. So nothing else in that box. So here is the bag of parts that he gave me. So as you can see, it is literally a bag of parts. So we've got a very nice Scale Auto motor. It's not a Slot-it motor, it's a Scale Auto one. So this really is going to be a mix and match car. So there's our motor. Now, actually, no, let's go here. So now we've got an axle. Now I'm assuming this is a Slot-it axle. As you can see, it's an angle winder. And we've got an axle stopper on there as well as the axle with a nice aluminium bevel gear. We've got some motor spacers just there. We've got, what have we got here now? We've got the front axle. Now I've actually taken this off the car because I think I'm going to do something with this. This was already on the car when I had it. So we've obviously got a front wheel with the zero grip front tyre and the axle, and the other front wheel is just here. So there's our wheels. Now this car came with these inserts. There's a set of 4 of them. Now I don't really want to use these inserts because I don't think they're the best looking inserts for this car. So I'm going to gather up those inserts and put them to one side. But what I will show you is this particular insert here. Now I did actually make 2 of them. I don't know where the other one's gone for a second. It's probably, oh, there it is there. So I actually made these inserts on the 3D printer. I drew them up in Tinkercad and then I printed them out on my 3D printer. And I think that they look better than a standard one. And also I tried to match what was in the original car. So that's kind of where I got on Tinkercad. And as you can see, they actually fit in the wheel very nicely. And I think they'll do the job with the back of the wheel painted up black. I think that'll be great. So that is obviously, you can see then we've got some alloy wheels. Now you'll notice that this alloy wheel here actually has an insert. And these are the little inserts that I made on the back of the TR7 video. And I sell these on the website. So all they are is the infill for the air wheels. So I'm not a fan of air wheels. I've been told how they're supposed to work, but for the life of me, I can never get them to work properly. So the way that I use these inserts is you simply push them around the wheel, clip them into place. That's it, done. And then that makes them basically a standard wheel. So if you've got a low speed track where the tyre's not ballooning out and not taking advantage of that air wheel there, it keeps the top of the tyre nice and flat. Doesn't make it all sort of sunk in, and that kind of levels up the tyre and makes it nice and level. So that's what we've got there. And obviously we've got a pair of wheels. Now when Francis gave me this car, it did actually have a pair of tyres on these wheels. They were Slot-it tyres and they were glued on, and to be honest with you, the tyres are a little bit narrow for these wheels. These wheels are probably 11mm, I'm not quite sure, but the tyres that are on them are about 1mm narrower than these wheels could have taken. So I had a bit of a grub around in my spares box, and I found these part worn but still extremely good NSR Super Grip tyres. Now these NSR tyres fit these wheels 100% perfectly. They fill up the wheel very, very well. Now NSR rubber is extremely good rubber, and as you can see, we got a full width wheel with a full width tyre, and that's going to give us all the grip in the world. When with those inserts, there's absolutely no concaving at the tyre at all. So I think that wheel there with an insert as well, or that tyre, I think we're in business. I think that looks okay. So there are our wheels and there are our tyres, and as you can see here, we've got a pile of little screws and bits and bobs. We've got these little inserts here. Now these actually are to go on the front axle, to adjust the front axle. So we got those and some other bits and bobs. I don't quite know exactly what this piece is. I don't know, maybe you tell me in the comments what that is. I don't think I'm going to need it. But we got some really nice body float screws in there as well, body screws and some shims. So that's all pretty good. Now back to this mystery packet. What is this? This is a suspension kit. That's right, because this car has got a pod. So we got a suspension kit for the pod. Now I'm not familiar with this exact kit, so it'll be a bit of a sort of a dive in and see. There's a little instruction manual in there as well, so we can fit suspension to this pod. Now, the body, absolutely fantastic condition body. As you can see, it has previously been glued together here and there. We are missing the rear spats. Now, if anybody, I know some people hate these spats. I love these spats. So if anybody in this watching this video has got a pair of spats to suit this car in the correct livery, so I can just fit them on and forget it, I would love to buy them from you, because I really would like this car to have its spats on, and I really like these cars with the spats. So there is the body. I think we'll try and pull that interior out, and we'll give it a little bit of colour, or at least on the driver. So there's the body, and then here is the chassis, and you can see it's all there. We've got the pod all in place, so that's waiting for its suspension kit. So we've got that as well. And also, I have a suspicion that the axles are going to be shorter than I would like. So out of my spares box, I found these two nice new straight hardened axles, because the front wheels at the very least were a little bit narrow for my liking. I'd like to make them a little bit wider, fill the front wheels right out and put some spacers in, and if just in case the back one is a bit short as well, then I've got a pair of axles. And like I say, we've actually got the brand new, no sorry, I didn't say it, did I? We've actually got a Slotting Plus guide in hand just in case we need it. I pulled this out of my spares box as well. It's one of those ones that you can cut down and adjust. So if the one that came with it isn't quite to my liking for whatever reason, I've also got my spare Slotting Plus guide. It's the last one I've got in my stock, so I hope I could use a slotted one, but if not, we got this one to cut down if needed. So those are all the parts. I think now we'll turn our attentions to starting off putting the chassis back together again. Okay, so we've got all the parts here that Francis gave me, all laid out on my mat, all the screws over here and all the other bits scattered around, ready to build this chassis. So I think the first thing to do is to check, but to see if that motor pinion is lined up nicely with the main gear. And to do that, we need to just pop this little spacer. The Slot-it gives you a little offset spacer to give you 0 or -1mm offset on the motor. So I'm going to put in the uppermost position, and that will give us our 1mm offset, so that will slam the car all the way down, and we can just simply pop that in there and then slide the motor in, and that gives us our 1mm dropped motor just there. And then we can take the axle, thread it through, fight those eccentric bearings, lift up the motor a little bit, drop them in there. And now we can see where the motor is sitting, and we're looking at the relationship between this face and this face. Now, to be fair, I think that's about spot on, but I would like to see a little bit of poke from this pinion beyond the face of this gear. So I think for that, all we'll need to do is put it on our pinion puller and just pull that pinion out by maybe only 0.5 mm, not very much at all. So that will probably do it, just there. And that is just so that it's just sunk in a little bit. And if we rebuild it, hopefully we'll get something that looks reasonably acceptable to my eye, where we've got good engagement of the gears. So pop the motor back in there, and then pop the axle in, and let's just lift them up. There, that looks much better to me. So we've now got a little tiny bit of poke, I mean fractionally, from the pinion to the face of this motor, which means we're getting perfect engagement in that gear. And I think that's a really good place to start. So now we've got the motor in the right place, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take out 2 of these washers and 2 of the screws next door, and we'll screw the motor in place. Okay, so that's the motor all screwed in and all looking very good. I think what we'll do now is we'll just pop this back axle in place, and we'll put this axle spacer in behind the bearing closest to the motor pinion. Now I notice that this has got a small shoulder on it and it's got a flat side, so I'm assuming that the shoulder will go up against a bearing. However, I don't think we got enough room on this side to get the axle spacer, the axle stopper, between the wheel and that bearing face. So I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to use the flat side up against the back of that plastic housing. It may not be the best for performance, but I think we'll get away with it in this particular instance. So if we just pop that axle in there, the trouble with those spherical bearings, you just got to make sure that they're in the right alignment to get the axle through. And then because I've gone and put the motor in first, I can no longer get that axle in there. So if we take the gear off, just push it back into the bearing, and then bring the axle back through to the other side. So there we are. So now we can just nip up that screw. Nice, well, not too tight, you don't want it too tight. And then we'll bring up the axle stopper. Now I've got another problem here. It's not actually going to get past because we're going to hit this little wall just here on this motor mount. So I'm guessing we could probably put the motor spacer on this side here on this bulkhead. I'm guessing. You're all going to scream at me now in the comments, I know, saying that's not how you do it, Rob. But that's how I think I'm going to at least get it to work in this particular instance. So I guess that'll have to work for now. So if we just pop him out, and then we can pop that one again with that nice flat face up against there, and then again get that spherical bearing straight, and we can move him all the way up. I think that will get the job done for a minute. So if we just nip up the grub screw there, we'll just nip that one up there just gently. It's a tiny bit of end float I can feel, almost nothing, but that is nice and free to turn. I think that'll work good enough for now. So that's the back axle in. The next step now is to just pop these wheels on, and we'll just see how we're fitting inside the body. So there we are. So that is the back axle all in. And as you can see, I've set it up so that those back wheels are absolutely smooth to the side of the body. Now that'll probably be a little bit too wide if I had managed to get those spats on, but at the moment the spats aren't on the car, so let's assume we're not going to be able to get some spats. So I think that's about right. That actually fits quite nicely. So with the back axle all in and all back resurrected, I think we'll turn our attentions to the front. Now I'm fairly sure that standard axle is a little bit too short, and this is the reason why. So if I put that back in there and I close it up like that, and then I put the body back on, we can see that there's quite a big difference. There's a lot of difference there. There's probably about 3mm per side, and I just don't think that we've got 6mm of spare real estate, because there's only 6mm there, so we need 3 of that on per side just to get the wheels out, let alone going into the wheel. So that's where my replacement axle comes in. So we're going to pop him on there. It was a bit loose actually, so I think what I might do in a minute is I'll put a tiny spot of super glue just on that axle, just rough it up with a bit of sandpaper, pop a tiny spot of super glue on there just to hold that in. But for now we won't worry too much about that. What we do need to do is we need to get this axle all sorted out. Now on these little sprues here we've got these weird little things. Now they go in the tops of these inserts here. They can be a little bit fiddly to fit, so if I just pop that on the end of an axle, we should be able to go up there. They go in like a channel, and they go up there and they lock in just to the top just here. And then these little cap things, they go on the top of those little forks down in there, and they actually act as a depth stop as we go across for the axle. So if we put the other one in the other side, and now we've got little axle blocks all inserted into the front end, along with the little limiter caps in the middle of the chassis. We've now, in theory, got the ability to fit our front axle. Now obviously this one is absurdly too long, so what I'm going to do is pop this wheel onto the other end of our ridiculously long axle, and then push it on just like that, and then we'll pop that into the car, and then we'll just measure the distance between the front of that wheel and where we'd like it to end up in the body. Now I'm keeping this side nice and flush, and we're going to measure that there. Now I think we need about -19mm according to my vernier gauge. So we'll go to the bench and we'll just chop this axle down by 19mm. Okay, so now I've got my axle, I can put my wheels on and see where I'm at on my chassis. So with the wheels in place, I can now pop the body on and see where I'm at. So here is the body going on there. I can see those wheels are absolutely perfect. However, I've spotted a bit of a problem. I don't appear to have any ground clearance. So if we put it on the setup plate, you see there's absolutely none. In fact, the wheels aren't even turning, look. So what I've discovered is, for those of you that don't know, these little inner cup things are sided. So if I take that one out and then turn it around and then pop it back in, and the same with the other side, it actually shifts the center point of the axle. And then we can just remove these two little cups and then pop that axle back in without the cups on, and then the wheel. And what we end up with is the height of the chassis exactly perfect for fitting a guide. There you go, you can see it just there, absolutely spot on. And then there's no rock in the axle. So there we are. I mean, I'm not overly familiar with slotted chassis. I've had a little bit to do with them, but not a huge amount. So I'm learning as we go, but it's all fairly straightforward, I guess. I still don't actually know what these little things here are for, but you know, that's what the comments are for. So we appear to now to have the right height, and we've now got the right length axle, but obviously we've got some float. So we've just got to measure the distance there. It looks like it's just over 4mm. So a pair of 2mm spacers on either side, that should get us perfect. So let's go to the lathe and let's make some spacers. So now we've got our spacers all made. I can come back to the axle now, and I'm just going to lightly scuff the end of this axle just so that the glue has got something to grip to, because these axles are not quite as stiff on the wheel as the original axles were. I'm just going to put a little tiny dot of glue on there, really not very much at all, and then I'm going to pop my wheel on, and there we are. And then I can put a spacer on there, and then we'll do exactly the same. No, actually I want to sand it first, don't I? So just give it a little bit of a scuff up. I'm not really sanding it, I'm just slightly agitating the surface. That will do perfectly well. And we can pop our axle in, and then pop the spacer on, and then put a little bit of glue on there, and then pop our wheel on, and then hopefully, there we go, that's it, just there, and all good. So that is the front axle all done. Now I think we can turn our attentions to the front guide. Okay, so having had a closer look at this guide, it is actually a wooden guide, which is really cool. I didn't actually think that this was a proper wooden guide, but because it is, we'll give it a go. I'm hoping that it'll be absolutely perfect, because it's a nice deep guide, the same as the Slotting Plus guide. So if I got this one here, I might be able to show that it's actually, if you can see there, a little bit deeper than the standard Slotting Plus guide. And because Crow Valley is a wooden track, this would be absolutely ideal. So how does it fit on the chassis? Now I have known these to be a bit stiff. Oh no, that is absolutely perfect. Right, we are going to use this guide. If anything, we might have to chop it down a little bit on the back end to get around the tight bits of Crow Valley. That's something I'll do when we get to the track. But that is absolutely spot on. We can 100% use that. That's really smooth. Right, so wire. I just buy it on eBay. This is 26 gauge silicone wire, and as you can see, it's a huge amount, and I get it dirt cheap from China. So I've shown this already on the channel about fitting wire and ferrules and whatnot, but I'll do it again just for the benefit of the people here that are new to my channel. So what I do is just roll the silicone wire around a nice sharp scalpel and just peel off the end and just spin it round so it brings in all the wires. I'll say we were good enough to have some ferrules with this kit as well, so we can pop a ferrule on there. And to be honest with you, I'm not happy with that. That is a little bit too short. So you want to take a little bit more off that. It's always surprising how much silicone you need to pull back to actually get a decent engagement on your ferrule. So there we are. So that's that, and then we just pop the ferrule back on. Now that looks better. We can roll that back over there like that. Now, the braid that I like to use on proper racing cars is this 0.2 NSR tinned braid. I find this works extremely well. I pulled back then because I forgot my scissors and my super duper fluid. I'll show you those in a second. So the way that you put this braid on is you come in from the top, feed it down into your guide, come back to roughly where you think it should be. Now this is probably a bit long because this is a really long guide. Roll it over the top like that, and then you can simply cut it off about 3mm in front of the guide. What I like to do then is get a pointy thing, could be a cocktail stick or it could be this screwdriver sort of thing, and you poke it in there and you just get the hole started. And then this is the trick to having a really neat braid or a ferrule put into a braid. Put it on a slot, put it on a setup plate like that and hold it nice and tight. And then I like to use these cranked pliers, and then with the wire facing away from you in your pliers, just like that, start off an angle, roll it in, and then push it. Of course it's going to go wrong now, isn't it, because I'm on camera now. That's great. So put it back in and then just get it all lined up, and then roll it from the back forwards and then push it down into the guide just like that. And what you'll find is on the bottom you'll get a super flat, really nice fitted braid, just like factory. And once you've done that, you can just sort of manipulate the braid to where you want it to be, and you'll get it really nice. And then on across the front there, you can just trim off the excess like that with a pair of small sharp scissors. That'll get the job done really well. Cut off a piece of wire like that so we can get rid of him. And there we are. So that is basically how you do your braids to make a really neat finish. So let me just do the other side. I'll get this on the car. Okay, so that is the guide, all fitted and turning extremely freely with absolutely no wobble from side to side worth talking about. We've got full length braids, which might end up being trimmed down later on. We'll have to see how it goes. And from the top end, it all looks extremely neat and nicely centering and so on. So if we put it on the setup plate, we can now see that if we move the back wheels, the front wheels also turn. Hopefully you'll be able to see that in the camera there. So the front wheels are turning. However, there's a little bit of resistance on those wheels. They're a little bit too stiff for my liking. If you run the front wheels too low, it keeps the front end from moving. You do need a little bit of compliance. So what we do need now then is just a little shim underneath that guide just to lower it down. Now I usually make those out of 0.5 plastic card or 0.1 or whatever it needs to be. I think we'll start with a bit of 0.5 plastic card underneath there. So let's go back to the bench and let's make a 0.5 spacer. Okay, so now that spacer is all fitted, and it ended up being a 0.3 spacer, not a 0.5. When we place the car on the setup plate and we move it backwards and forwards on the back wheels, you might be able to see there that those front wheels are actually moving just, which is perfect. And when we roll them with our fingertips, it's incredibly easy to turn, and that's exactly what you want. Just catching on the track but also very, very free to turn with your fingertips. So now we've got the guide all in place and working perfectly. We've got the front axle done and the back end all together. I think we're now going to take the pod out and we're going to have a go at fitting this spring kit. So here it is. I've not actually seen one of these before or fitted one. So we'll have a look and see what parts we got. I do see that there is actually an instruction piece of paper in there. So maybe we ought to break some rules and actually start by looking at the instructions. That would be a first, wouldn't it? So we can see that we got a nickel silver etch there. Nickel silver etch, which presumably is some sort of top brace. I'm not entirely sure. And then we've got some other things, and we've got some all important springs. Be careful not to lose these springs. So I do know from experience that these can sometimes go all over the place. I'm struggling. I'm going to leave those and I'll undo those off camera. So we've got some little screws there and whatever. Anyway, let's have a look at the instructions. Wow, they're not exactly comprehensive. So there we are. I guess that's all we really need to be looking at there. So yeah, I mean, let's have a go at fitting them. Okay, so having studied this, I think I know how this goes together. I can use the long bolts on this particular car, and the long bolts go all the way through the chassis and up through these posts to form the main suspension sort of arms, if you like. And then down on top of the pod, I've got to put one of these two etches. Now in my particular case, it's actually the smaller of the two because that's the one where the holes line up. And there's a slight recess in the top of that etch where it locates the screw of the spring so it doesn't bind up against the shaft of the screw itself. And then on top of these screws, I would in my case screw this plastic piece here to go on the top. And these two grub screws have a cap fitted on the bottom of each one, and the grub screws come up through these middle holes or down through these middle holes, and they actually form the limiter for the suspension, because as the suspension bottoms out it hits the nickel plate. So with that said, let us just try and assemble this together live as we go. So there is the screw, he goes in there, and we screw him all the way down nice and tight, get past the threads, and then boom, in he goes. And the other one exactly the same, just screw him in until he clears the plastic pod and he just drops in like not that, there you go, there, like that. Right, so then if we take this nickel silver part here and we just snip him out of his sprue, it's quite stiffer than I thought actually. So let's just try the tweezers. That side's already out, look, so that might help. So if we just ease him, no, something a little bit stiffer than that. Let's try these pliers here. Yeah, this is an etch, but it's actually, oh there we are, it just snaps straight out, so that was pretty easy. So that piece there goes down onto our screws at the back just like that. So now we've got that. So actually, no, I tell a lie. That little recess, I thought it was to clear this, but actually it isn't, is it? It's actually to clear that body post. So if we turn him around and then drop him in there, there we are. Now that's perfect, just like that. And then, I don't really want to, yeah, let's come back to those springs in a second. So now we want to just get this plastic piece off the fret here. And I think it might be wise to take two, actually let's just try and take these grub screws and put a cap. Maybe we'll put the cap on first or last, I'm not entirely sure. Let's get that grub screw in there. This is going to be tricky, isn't it? I wonder if this Allen key is a little bit too large. We go and get a Slot-it Allen key. There we go, the right tool for the right job, it would seem. Now, these grub screws have got to come up into this plastic part. So if I push that grub screw onto the Slot-it Allen key, which seems to work, put a bit of pressure on there, and then technically undo it because you want to wind it into that plastic. And we'll just come back. There you go. So that's now coming into that plastic there, and we'll take the Allen key out, and there we are. So we've got grub screw in there, and we'll do exactly the same to the other side. So I'll feed the Allen key through, put the grub screw on the end, and then wind it, there we are, that fits much better, and then wind it back into that plastic housing like that. So now we've got our two grub screws in the housing. Now, now I've got to try and put these caps on. So if I'll take one off the sprue and see if we can do it this way round. And that presumably has got to go on there, according to the instructions at the very least. And we slide him on there. And then I'm just going to try and wind that on. This is not going to be easy. There we go. Right, okay, so I can feel that going in, and that cap is screwing down onto that Allen key, or that grub screw. Yeah, okay. So I wonder if it might be easier to just sort of put it on with a pair of pliers, maybe. There we go. Oh, that's better. Right. Okay, so that's looking good now. I don't know if they're supposed to screw on, or whether you're supposed to just squeeze them on, but either way, that has gone on there quite nicely. So now we've got the little cap on there, and we'll do the same to the other side. Cut off one of these. I guess they give you lots of these caps because they probably know you're going to lose them because they're not exactly very big. So let's just do exactly the same on this one here, and I wonder if I can just simply push it on rather than screwing it on. I wonder if that is a thing. So I'll tell you in a second. Will it just push on, or does it have to be screwed on? I think it might have to be screwed on, to be honest. So let's just do that. Just play it safe because I don't want it pinging away. Let's just try and screw it on. God, these parts are small and fiddly. Right. Okay. Right. Well, that seems to vaguely have done it anyway. Let's just see if we can just square it up with the pliers, maybe. There you go. Yeah, I felt that go. Right. Okay. So there we are. That is basically the limiters on the bottom of this plastic top plate. So once we've gotten to that stage, we can then. There it goes. What did I say about the spring? Now I've got to go and find that. So let me go and get that spring. Found it. Right. Okay. So let's come back. Let's put that spring on there, and then I guess we want to match up those sides, and we put the cup over the top of both of those springs like that, and then screw them up from the underside. You have to excuse the hands. This is not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do and film at the same time. So we just screw him in like that, and then the other side just like that. There we are. I'll give him a couple of turns just because it feels good. And there we are. So that's all in. So I don't know if you can see, but that all appears to be, actually it's not quite square. So let me just sort of, now I've got a bit more control, I can now undo it and I can put it all back in nice and straight. That looks a bit better, doesn't it? There we go, like that. And the other side, and I think that is probably about right. Let's pop in the two screws in the front of the pod. We can just use the ordinary standard screws, they will be absolutely fine. If we pop in two standard screws, I'll just hold the front of the pod together. Now you don't need to do these front screws up terribly tight. In fact, you want to leave them, kind of do them up and then give them sort of half a turn loose, just so that they can rattle around. They don't want to be loose, but they don't want to be tight either. So if you just sort of go down to the stop and then come back half a turn, just give it a little bit, and there we are. So that should, there we go, that is actually it. There, it's working. So there we are. And then obviously these little M2s with the little stoppers on the end, they actually form your limiter. So you just wind those down. You could wind this top bar down, or you could wind those limiters up. Either way, take a little bit of fiddling around, I guess. But I think that's basically the principle of it. So if we screw those in a little bit more, yeah, they're pretty much even on the top now, and that gives you a really nice amount of movement. So let's just pop him on the setup plate and just see what we got. So there we go. That is it. I don't know if you can see that in camera, but we've actually got a really nice amount of suspension there. That's really cool, and we can strengthen up the springs by doing up the outer screws, and we can adjust the movement by moving those two inner screws. So that's the suspension done. So all we've got to do now is just solder the wires to the motor and then put the body on. And talking of the body, you'll notice but it was actually missing one wing mirror, but we got it here. So we'll just glue him on, and then that'll be good for the body. I think we'll paint the interior as well. So, apart from screwing the body on now, I think the entire car is completely finished. Now, apart from the little jobs you've just seen me do, I'll just show you a couple of things that I did off camera just to get over the finishing line. Now, I did have a problem with the rear suspension binding up on the body. Just didn't quite allow the suspension to work as it should do. So all I did is I trimmed a little bit of plastic here, just a hair, just to take it right back to that mold line. I also took the pips off the top of those little mouldings there, and I also thinned back the plastic along here and here, just to try and give the back end a little bit of clearance. Also, I had to change the grub screws in the back. They were 6mm as standard, and I've changed them to 4mm, and I also changed the 2 long brass screws to the 2 short screws, and that now means that the back end actually works 100% perfectly, and we can get all the movement that we actually need absolutely fine. So the other thing that you might have noticed is I rerouted my wires, as I noticed that you can actually pass the wires through a little gap just underneath the axle. Now that obviously means that we don't have any issues with the binding of the wire on the front end anymore. It also still allows the guide to center really nicely. I added 4.5 grams of my own lead, as you saw me do, put a little bit of foil tape on the wires here just to keep them down, and also I painted the driver. Now, I don't like these vacuum formed interiors for painting. They can be a bit of a problem because the vacuum forming can be a bit vague. This one wasn't terrible, it wasn't brilliant, but you know, it gets a little bit of colour inside there, better than absolutely nothing. And I put a little bit of detail in there, just tried to put the top of the trumpets and the 2 fuel rails that run down that are supposed to be blue. Yeah, it's okay, it does the job. And as you saw, I bonded the wing mirror on, put a post through, and then filled it full of glue, and that is absolutely strong with a post in there as well. Now, one thing that I forgot to say about earlier on was this, what I use this for. Now, when I use brand new braids, I often find that the braids themselves don't conduct power all that well, because there's maybe a little bit of oxidization on the surface of the braid, maybe a little bit of dirt, and I just find that the electricity has a problem getting through those braids, brand new braids, and the car can be a little bit stuttery on performance. So the way to solve that, and it solves it incredibly well, is just to put a drop of braid juice on the braids. Now, I don't know what's in this stuff, but I can absolutely tell you it 100% works. One drop of this on your braids and it will completely transform the way your car runs. Once you've tried this stuff, if you've got a little bit of a jittery car, you'll never go back. It works absolutely fantastically. So that's that. And as you can see, my inserts went in perfectly well after painting the back of the wheel. Now, I did notice on the Pendle Slot Racing website that you can actually buy the full set of wheel inserts for this car for only £3.50. And I noticed that the rear wheel has actually got a 4-spoke wheel in it, not a 5. But that may be something I'll invest in later on. These are only pushing anyway. I can always get a set if I want to and replace the inserts. So now, how much suspension do we have? Now, this is actually quite difficult to show you because it's not screwed down, but they're actually there. Yeah, there you go. You can see That's a really nice amount of movement now. I have limited it a little tiny bit because we don't want it to rub up into the arches, and it doesn't. So it's absolutely fine. It works extremely well. It still rolls extremely nicely. When you collapse the suspension down as I am now, it's still very free rolling, so it doesn't actually interfere with the back of the car. So with all that now highlighted, let's pop these two body screws into this body, pop her on the turntable, and then give her a thrash around Crow Valley and see if I can get close to that Scalextric's time. Excuse me while I take a moment to worship the fastest car that's ever been around Crow Valley. I am not worthy. 44.9. Forget 45s, just forget them. 44.9. And that wasn't even the fastest lap it could have done. The lap that I recorded at the end, when I just packed everything away, was a 45 dead. But I stumbled on one bend, which probably lost me about 0.2 of a second. So that would have been a 44.8. And I think there's even more in this car. What a phenomenal car. I thought my Scalextric's car was really good, and to be fair, I underplayed that car when I did that video. I was so disappointed that it wasn't my fastest car or my second fastest car. I downplayed it. I didn't make a big enough song and dance about the score that it got, because it was a really, really good time. But all hail the new fastest car around Crow Valley, the fastest car that's ever been around that track. And she will put in a 45 something all day long without even thinking about it. Now, to be fair, you do have to drive her a little bit to get those times. She won't just put them in automatically. If you go too hard into a corner, she will get a little bit sideways, but that could be down to the fact that I use slightly older tyres. If I'd used a brand new fresh set of tyres, maybe even added an extra couple of grams in the back end, because you remember I only added about, was it 9 grams, 4.5 each side. I could have put a little bit in the back. Maybe that would have helped. Maybe a bit more practice. Maybe I could have scrubbed the track and made it totally clean. But I basically did what I always do to all my cars. I gave it all about the same amount of attention. And what have we got? A 44.9 with the potential to go even faster. Now, apparently, the Porsche is a quicker car than this. So, Slot-it. If you'd like to donate me a car, a Porsche, to try and beat this car to set a new fastest lap record on Crow Valley, I'd be grateful to receive it and give it a go. Anyway, on that rather light-hearted note, I hope that you've enjoyed this sort of content. And if you have, maybe you'll subscribe. And if you could hit the little bell button, that would be awesome. So until the next time, when I probably won't have a faster car than this, thank you very much.